I've developed a rule since I was retired, which is that friends of friends get 1 hour free consultation.
Good, you.
Wrap it up.
Well, it's because the law changed, and now they want me to do side it.
Yes, ma'am.
Click on it, drag and drop, and I have to figure out papers, and I have to
You're
list that,
so-
and I have to color
We
it, and I have to put
we only did
history
13
number.
this morning.
It's like crazy. 13. It's.
Oh,
Yeah.
we're good, you're good. I know.
Right.
We need to go.
Are we recording?
Catch her. She's gonna come in back on.
Are we rolling, Bob?
No. We are.
Gracie Milas. Bob, how was your trip?
It was good, thank you. Learned a lot about military history that I had no idea about.
Did you straighten Brexit out for him? Did you tell him you're on the committee and you could do that?
I offered them a trade, which they wouldn't take.
Where's the one?
Oh, you know what?
They said, we'll take Farage and Boris Johnson
Who is
if you'll take.
personnel, Boris? I'm Boris.
We're talking UK Brexit.
Yeah, really. I always do that when I'm traveling because it's an innocuous way to start the conversation. You know? Who's on the?
Judy's in the horse race.
Oh,
She's in a horse race.
I would think it's her horse though.
Hey, Judy Carmichael.
Yes, you got me.
Okay, this is the study committee. We haven't started recording quite yet. We're not called to order, but we got them.
Well, I'm ready.
Okay, good.
Whenever you're ready to start.
Okay, that'll be great. And let us know if you can't hear us because they do have to speak right into their mic, so it's difficult. Yeah, it's hard.
That means you, Till.
Did you ask her for horse
It's
one?
hard. And they want to know the status of the horse race.
We don't run till 4.
Oh.
Okay, all right. Now we can go to meeting.
All right.
Let me get these
Yeah, when
recorded.
we run at 4, I will show you on the floor.
We better be done by 4.
Oh my God!
Please,
Don't
please,
even imagine
please.
we might not.
4's too long.
Yeah, 90 minutes is about what my mind
Ready?
and butt can take.
The time is 12:02. We're going to call to order the Grand County Change in Form of Government Study Committee meeting, regular meeting. Today is Friday, June 14th, 2019. In attendance, we have Walt Dabney, Cricket Green, Bob Greenberg, Stephen Stocks, Marcy Till, and on the phone we have Judy Carmichael. We'd like to begin the meeting by having a pledge. Mr. Greenberg, could you lead us in the pledge?
Happy to. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Hail to
The
the
next
Queen.
area will be the approval of the minutes. Everyone has received the minutes from May 17th, 2019. Give anybody an opportunity to let us know if there are any changes on the minutes. Mr. Greenberg?
Yes. Let me find it here. On page 4, the Jeepers, right down the middle, there's a paragraph that starts with Bob stated, which isn't quite accurate. What it should read is, Bob stated a higher voter turnout expected in 2020, county election year rather than a municipal election year, and there's no need to rush change form of government as the current form has been supported by the majority during 3 different elections. And then on page 6, in the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the paragraph that starts Judy added, there's a note appended to that paragraph. Note, this is compared to a county manager, so on and so forth. While that's probably helpful and certainly accurate, it doesn't belong in the minutes because it doesn't reflect what happened during the meeting, so I'd like to strike that. So the minutes only reflect what we said, right or
Yeah.
wrong. Smart or dumb. And I think those are all my concerns.
That's on 6 where, Bob?
6, right smack in the middle.
Okay, thank you.
Any other suggested changes? Do we have a motion to approve the minutes as modified?
So moved.
Second by Walt Dabney. So all in favor of approving the minutes with the 2 changes. One change that will be on paragraph or on page 4, adding to the paragraph that Bob stated the higher voter turnout, to add in the word to change the current form of government as expressed by the majority. And then on page,
No, I just said the current form of government
It's been supported during the majority.
Right.
during the majority.
Right.
And then to strike strike the note that's listed on page 6, paragraph 5. All in favor? Unanimous.
Judy?
Miss Judy Carmichael,
Whoop.
would you approve that? Judy, you're on mute.
Yes.
Okay, it passes unanimously. Moving now to general reports, to community outreach and possible action. Item B, report on list of organizations to whom the flyer, including the open house dates, has been sent. Ms. Dillon?
So, Mr. Greenberg, did you want to bring up the issue of having someone other than a study committee member address a topic?
Yeah, this is a question for the chair, actually. And I think it is your call, so I'm assuming you've made it, but I just want to be clear. Is it your intent that people other than study committee members can place items on our agenda? And if so, is that anybody or just Ruth?
So the minutes, what I'm getting at, the agendas are given to me and they're approved by me. So far, all the individuals that have given items to add have either been Miss Dillon, the county attorney, and I believe Mr. Baird have been the only individuals that have come forward with those concerns. I think for Ruth in her position, there have been everything that she's brought up is something that we should address. But I do go through those, and I do understand that they're not committee members. But yes, I have been putting
Okay.
those on, and it's been intentional.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, so back to the report. It's in your packet, but so the flyer announcing the open house has gone to, I'll just for the record state, all the county staff and officials, including you all, Moab City Communications Director, City Manager and Mayor, Castle Valley Town Clerk and Mayor, Grand Water District Manager, of course with the request to forward it on, Thompson Springs Fire Chief, all applicants for the Appointment Council and or Study Committee. It was posted around town in about 35 locations. It was posted on the Study Committee webpage, with the updated open house dates. Posted on County News section of the Grand County website, which is our homepage. All the county department heads, elected officials, the Chamber of Commerce, the TI, the Sun News, 15 churches were mailed a little announcement. I think Judy may have put together saying, please post this if you feel appropriate. We did get 5 or 6 of them back for bad addresses. County boards, commissions, and committee chairs, so that's a couple of dozen more people. The CIB list, which is anyone who's eligible for CIB funding, that's a list of about 30 or 40. Some of these are getting it more than once. League of Women Voters, Moab Dinosaur Bikers, various individuals that Mr. Dabney sent out, Moab Area Progressive Network, Association of Ministries, Grand County Democratic Party. I don't know if it went to the Republican Party. I didn't hear back.
Jeremy said that he would take care of
He
that.
said he would. I just don't know if he
And
did.
he's the chair.
I'm sure he did, but I didn't get word on that. And then the other thing that's not in the packet is through an email that Mr. Dabney put together, we sent a message inviting former council members and commissioners. We didn't have any former commissioners, I don't think, but anyway, by email, inviting them to come to speak under Citizens to be Heard or be at the open houses or just give us something in writing about their views, since they are situated perfectly to provide that. And I forgot to put that on the list. So, yes, there must be others as well.
Can I
Ms.
just
Till?
add,
Microphone.
KZMU, KCYN,
Moab happenings. Trying to think. So and then both the Sun Times and the TI all received, information, and we also ran a small ad in with all of those publications. Yeah, that's really.
And if I could just clarify one thing, on the previous council members, it was only the ones we had email addresses for. We did a pretty good amount of research, and it may have been only about 15 that we could find. So,
Mr. Gruber?
In the 43 years I've lived here, I don't think anything has been this well publicized in my memory. I think a fabulous job has been done.
I feel very.
And the turnouts, by the way, I think.
Well,
That's
I also
reflect
feel,
that.
I feel like we have done our due diligence to inform the public in every way, possible, and I feel like we have done a good job.
Excellent. Any other discussion more on item B? Walt?
Just from the open houses,
We'll talk about the open houses on item C
okay.
and D individually.
yes.
Anything else? Then if not, we'll move to item C, report on June 5th, 2019 open house at the Grand Center and the number of completed surveys received. Do you want to start, Walt?
Well, I was just going to add to that last thing as far as public comment. The feedback from everybody that talked to me after we had discussed was this was really helpful, and I didn't get a single negative comment from anybody that was at any. How many we have? 50 or 60 people at the two? More? Okay.
That's amazing.
75 that came and they sat and talked, and but they just said this has been very helpful because you weren't advocating anything. We were just talking through all the different possibilities, and this has helped me figure out what I wanted to do. So I didn't know what to expect. We're on this now, right? I didn't know what to expect really at that first open house, and I came out of there feeling like this was really a good idea. I also had called Stephen and went by and talked to him and said, now you need to get up there in front of everybody and lay out the groundwork. That was totally unnecessary. We didn't need to do that. People were ready to sit down and talk. And so, worked great. I'm looking forward to Castle Valley and then this accumulatively with all the efforts we've made to get the word out, and the TI and others have covered it. They were there, I think, last night too. Somebody was taking pictures. And
That was Sun News.
okay, Sun News last night, and I'm feeling positive that we are being very open in this.
Marcy?
I just have a question for Ruth. So are the materials
Microphone.
are the materials that were in the handout packet also on the website?
Yes, they are.
I want to express my sincere hope that maybe this will break this community's bad habit of getting involved in issues after they've been decided.
Oh, I don't think so.
Walt?
I expect that too. The other comment I got a lot of was the work Ruth's done in laying out all that stuff on the wall, very complete, very detailed, handouts for people to look at, and I certainly appreciated it, and all the people that came in there. A lot of people read their way around the room, and so it felt like we were prepared, and a lot of that was you, Ruth. Very much so.
And I thought the turnout, especially at the Grand Center, we had a wide mix of individuals. I went in thinking that I would find no one under the age of 30 besides myself, but I was surprised. Even at the Grand Center, we had individuals that came out, had lots of questions. They mingled with, probably the most popular person there was Mr. Dabney and Judy Carmichael. Nobody wanted to sit with me, but that's okay. But everybody really enjoyed it. They had lots of questions. I can't say how much Ruth has done for us, and it's been phenomenal. For the next open house that we had at the Water District, she even color-coded the different choices that I thought above and beyond the attention to detail was fantastic. Marcy?
I'm a visual learner, and for me to see all of that laid out and kind of graphed out visually, even though we've been talking about it for months, really clarified some stuff in my mind. It was very educational for me, and the questions that people had and the things that they were curious about, in formulating a response or an answer to their questions, really helped clarify some of my own thinking. It was very, very good. I thought it was great.
Judy, do you want to jump in on the topic of the open house at the Grand Center especially? And we can't hear you yet. I'll let you know when we can hear you. All right. We'll now move to item D. I know we've covered it a little bit, but the report on June 13th, 2019 open house of the Water District and a number of completed surveys received. Anything in particular that we want to mention on D?
Well, I don't have to go first, but I could certainly add to what's been said so far. So here are the packet of received surveys, together with a couple of emails that you all have seen from individuals. And also what's in here are there was a handout that Marcy came up with, most of the handout ideas actually. I put together a bunch of research and got legal review on it, but kudos to Marcy, really. I want to say, though, that in here is one of the handouts is we had them on a table just fill out their ideas about at-large or district voting. And so we did get a handful, maybe 5 or 6 comments last night. We only got one the first night, and the error was on my part. I had it right at the registration desk, and so I learned I need to move it away where people can feel a little more space. So the other thing is I wanted to give you the actual count on each of these. We had 25 from the first open house, 23 last night turned in, plus the treasurer's office has received 8, and that had to have been from the first open house because...
It was. I checked with him before, and he'd gotten 6. So...
And I didn't get any this morning, so, and we just had this one last night. So those 8 came from the first open house, so we can expect more from last night. Plenty of people took surveys home. I did allow them to take to their spouse or their whomever, and did say, please no copying. And so I wanted you all to know that piece too. I think that's all I had. And I think there's a topic to discuss what else we need to do about compiling these, and also do they need to go out to other people. So that'll come next, or soon. And by the way, no one has seen these but me. They were counted in front of Judy and in front of the treasurer's office staff. And I'm just holding tight. I haven't studied them, and I won't be doing that unless you all direct me to.
Judy, did you want to weigh in on the next, the second open house we had? I think the turnout was again great. It seems the more that we've had, I think we had more, it seemed like we had more people at the Water District. That might have been because the area was a smaller area.
I will say what I think I counted. So I took a snapshot when it was the most full. And so when it was the most full, it was like about 24 people at the Grand Center, and more than that last night. And I didn't count. I believe my count was roughly 40 or 45 at the Grand Center, and somewhere between 50 to 60 last night.
Wow. That's fabulous.
So that's over 100 people that I believe have attended.
And y'all think that's good?
Yes.
For Moab? For Moab, it's excellent.
It's fabulous. Having been involved in public
Look
life
how many
here for
people are in
43
here.
years. Yeah.
Look at how many people are here. Come and sit in the planning
Clearly
commission
my
meeting.
And one of them's getting
expectations
paid
are
to
too
be here.
high.
2 are getting paid. So see? And a wife.
Yeah, really.
And a
Really,
wife.
so- Oh, well.
All right.
I mean,
You know,
planning
we-
commission,
Two of them
nobody
are
comes
promised
in.
payment.
Well,
So, yeah.
Yeah, I was thrilled because I have been here for we've been here for 5 or 6 meetings. We've never had more than 3 people here, I don't think. So that turnout on purpose to sit down and really engage in talking was really good.
I did have one person say to me, this has been so well publicized, and what have you given us? Like 3 or 4 options of ways to be involved that, if somebody comes around 6 months from now or a year from now and says, wait a minute, we didn't know this was going on, this person
Yeah.
said there's no excuse for that. So, it'll happen.
Oh, of course.
Always.
Well, the whole dark sky thing.
Yeah.
Not one time ever did anybody come in and say one thing one way against the dark sky. The minute it passed, everybody screaming. And I'm like, where were you?
Yeah,
Where were you?
That's our habit, isn't it?
gotta read those agendas that are posted.
Any other discussion on item D? If not, we'll move to item E. An idea for sending enumerated surveys electronically and by U.S. mail.
This landed on the agenda because I had a friend of someone who attended the first open house. The friend couldn't be there because the hours they work for each of those open houses, 4 to 7, couldn't be there. They have to work during those hours. And I got to thinking, that's probably the hospitality industry's hours, restaurants and hotels. That's a big part of our community here. Anyway, that's where the question came from. And so we immediately got the packet items, the handouts, on the county website so they could at least look at those, but I did not put the survey there. I feel like you guys would want control of the survey so that someone doesn't go out and make a bunch of copies and cheat. And so, and I know you all talked about before maybe doing a trifold out to the, I think that's what you were talking about, doing a trifold out to the electorate, doing, surveying the employees. The paper said the employees were going to be interviewed, which is not.
Cricket?
Well, I'm just trying to think outside the box because every time you say you're worried about them, how about we put a watermark on them?
I do have a way to do it.
Then if you put a watermark on them, then everybody makes a copy. You can tell it's a copy. So if you do the watermark, what if, because you're worried about the hospitality industry, what if we took a certain amount and went to each motel and restaurant in the main corridor, and anybody else that asked for them, but if they had a watermark, you wouldn't have to worry about it being copied.
What
Marcy?
What if we, in our next publicity info, said something to the effect of, missed the open houses? Here's one last opportunity.
That's better.
That's good.
Get your information and fill out a survey. Contact X, Y, and Z so that we can mail it to you, go to the treasurer's office, and give them several options so that they can do that on their time and put a deadline on it. Say, this window is closing in 3 weeks, 2 weeks.
That sounds like a fantastic thing to put in a newspaper editorial that somebody has to write up.
Say thank you to the people who came out and, spread the word, and here's one final, here's another opportunity. Come to our meeting next week, come get your survey.
Cricket, then Walt? Okay,
I like the idea.
I just think that makes a whole lot more sense than some blanket mailing.
Me too.
Me too.
That's just a waste of a lot of money.
Would it be possible, or would anybody be against having a copy here, just when we have our meetings, to have copies available with the agenda if we had them watermarked?
As long as Carrie and Doug don't fill out 30 of them.
Well, if they're watermarked, then, yeah. That's easy to do that, because if you start to make a
I
copy,
think it's a
then it
good
has
idea.
that.
Sue.
Whichever is easier, right? Watermarked or numerical, either way, as long as we have a way to control it, is the idea. Yeah. So have them here. Are you all in agreement with that?
Should we vote?
If we do what's been suggested, I don't think we need to worry about watermarks or numbers.
Yeah.
Really. I mean, we're not, this is not an election.
Right.
And it really, when we get to F, I think we can talk about how we use these without turning it into an election. I don't want to create a situation where someone could even imagine there's a ballot box to be stuffed.
Right.
Because frankly, both political parties are real good at that, and we know what they think.
Marcy?
I think this is still part of our discussion on the open houses, or maybe we've moved on to the surveys, I'm not sure, but it's June 15th. What do you think is a reasonable deadline, a cutoff for having the last gasp from the public?
On the surveys?
Yeah, end of the month seems reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
we meet in Castle Valley on the 17th.
That's Monday. It's tomorrow.
Right, so that's next week, so that
2 weeks.
2 weeks from that Monday.
How
July
about,
1st.
how about the 4th
July
of
1.
July?
And
How
the
about
other,
the 4th of July?
Good idea.
the other thing that
Easy to remember.
that
That's what I
people
think.
people still can have if people still can have their input, not in the form of a survey, but they're always welcome to come. I don't want people to think that
Right.
it's a last
Or to
opportunity.
email, or to write.
Or email. Yeah.
Because I just wondered if we could. They're going to have the big thing at the park on the
table.
4th of July.
With the music.
But I won't be able to be there because I have tours that morning. So I don't want to say we should do that because if I can't help, I don't want anybody else to have to. But maybe we could just have a sign, a table with the information, and hey,
We could, who's around on the 4th of July? Anybody? I probably am.
I won't be.
We could have a table and just
Yeah, talk to
answer
people.
questions
As
and
long
say,
as it
this
doesn't
is,
interfere with
this is,
fireworks.
Yeah.
opportunity
Because they sent out around
Last
to Jill
opportunity for
saying, if you
get your
wanted to
questions
booth.
answered.
I got one through the.
at this initial stage.
It could be an impromptu open house. Whoever can show up, I'll come help.
If there's going to be 4 of us, we have to open meeting notification,
I'm
etc.
sure one of us would be
Just
happy to
go ahead
leave.
and do that, and then it won't
We
matter.
could do that.
Okay.
We could post
But
if you
I
guys are gonna
think
do it.
I got a letter through the chamber asking if, for all the companies, if they wanted to put a booth up. So I think that there's somebody setting that up in charge. I think it was the chamber. I saw the letter through
I can
ours.
find out through the travel council. They have a
Yeah,
booth.
maybe that's what it is. Maybe.
Walt,
I don't know how long the thing goes over there, but if there's 4 of us available, or if Judy is, I don't know whether we could schedule it. We can have 2 at a time. We don't need to have 4 there.
Sure.
at the
Or
same
even
time.
one for an hour or
Yeah,
2
but
hours.
2 is a lot more fun.
Yeah. Yeah, you're not sitting there by
Well, we
yourself.
meet again next Friday. Could we bring this
Yeah.
back?
Bring it back Friday?
Bring it back
You
next
guys?
Friday.
Except
This
that-
part of it, you mean?
Yeah, this part of
So
it.
then
There's-
maybe one more thing, I'm sorry.
Sure.
If we are going to do it the 4th of July, then maybe we should give them a couple more days to hand in the packet. So that
Yes,
the,
that's a good point.
the following Friday or
Friday.
something.
That's a good idea.
So,
July
Friday
12th.
the 5th or Monday the 8th?
the 5th.
Friday the 5th.
So I think we've talked about 2 other ideas, one of which would be putting out a newspaper type editorial. We could think about that portion in a little bit. We'll get to that. But the other is that we mentioned having surveys here. I don't know if we need to make a motion or to just have the surveys here available.
If y'all are in agreement, you don't need a motion.
That'll be fine. So we'll just have them available. If people want to come, you can come down to the meetings and pick up a copy of the survey.
You do mean during the meetings?
Yes.
Sure, just have it on the table in the back
Okay.
or
You only
available.
need to bring like one.
Well,
Anything we put in the paper, we ought to re-emphasize that these are open meetings and that we would be thrilled to have people come and share their ideas with us at these meetings too.
Your attendance is needed and appreciated.
Yes.
And Stephen's point about this, when we say, this is your last opportunity for input at this juncture, that we'll be listening ongoing. But this is where it's pretty critical.
It's the last opportunity for the survey.
For
The
the
survey.
survey, yeah, yes. We want to make sure that's clear that we're just going to shut the door on the survey, but your input is open through the whole process. Am I wrong or?
nope, you're right.
Okay. I want to make that clear.
And then for the employees, do you all want me to send it out to employees and have them
Well, we
drop it off
don't
at
know
the treasurer's
who's,
office?
we don't know who's done it already.
Pardon?
We don't know which employees have done
I've
it
been paying
already.
attention. I
Huh?
only know of one.
So if you put a note on it saying, if you've done this already, please
Yeah,
shred this.
of course, I could do that.
She says she's only got one. I don't think that's a problem.
Well, Christopher may have gotten 8. You know?
Yeah.
That's possible, yes. So, and these have been marked at Marcy's suggestion. It's SV for Spanish Valley, GC for Grand Center, CV for Castle Valley. So you'll have, if you want to look at differences, and we could do E for employee, or
And,
Just some
and
way to-
I
If there's any
assume there were
trends
employees at the
by-
open houses.
Location, I don't know.
I didn't catch that.
I assume there were employees at the
Not
open
many.
houses as well. Just
I only
one?
know of one,
Really?
but
You
I
know-
don't know every single employee though.
Well, and I don't know, I feel like maybe instead of blanketly canvassing the staff, maybe they should have the same opportunity that the general public has had, and that is, hey, we're collecting information. Here is the survey. Please come pick it up. Turn it in at your leisure.
I agree.
Because if people don't care enough to come and walk down the hallway and get it,
And we have interviewed every department head and elected official.
So we could, you tell me, treat it the same as general public? Or, I mean, I have been giving them reminders about the open house, so that's already over and above.
Yeah.
Or send it directly to them.
I think Marcy's right.
I do too.
I think if you're a county employee and you're not motivated enough to get engaged in this, we don't need to lead you into the barn.
You okay with that?
See, I'm sorry, I did have one more thing I needed to bring out. Maybe it'll come back to me, sorry.
Okay.
Lost it.
Any other discussion on item E? If not, we'll move to item F, guidance on compiling completed surveys for ultimately reporting to the study committee. Marcy?
Well, I was thinking about the surveys, and I've also been kind of thinking about the information that we receive at the open house. At the open houses, and I was trying to figure out if there was a way to somehow I mean, we can tally the information from the surveys fairly easily, but what I really want to look at are kind of trends and perceptions, and maybe some kind of a way to quantify what we find from the surveys that isn't necessarily statistical. So I think we need to have a subcommittee that's going to go through the surveys, just like Bob and Judy interviewed the county department heads, and kind of read that information, read the comments, get a feeling for it, and then put together a report about the general trends.
Bob?
I think you're right. I would not want to see kind of a vote. What I would like to suggest is that you do kind of follow what Judy and I did, which is that one person who's attended each of the meetings take those surveys and the comments that you all received during the meeting and write it up, and then circulate it to the other members who were there to make sure you got it right, and then give us a report. I mean, I'm interested in the trends. Most people like this, or most people like that, or these were the concerns people had. I'm not interested so much in, 7 people check this box, 8 people check that. And we've had votes. We don't need to do that again. So I'm more interested in kind of a narrative report, and I think the people that do it are the people who were the committee members at each of the open houses.
Walt?
Okay, so you're not talking about written down survey or anything else. You're talking about perceptions of the conversations and stuff.
And after reviewing the surveys. You
Okay,
bet.
because
From each meeting.
haven't been at the first two. I've got a pretty clear perception of what most people are saying, and so that's doable. Yeah.
Marcy?
I think the other interesting information that, for me, came out of the open house is there were some really good questions that I had not considered, that I think this whole group is ultimately going to have to consider as we move forward. And I want to make a list of those kind of poignant questions.
I think that's excellent. I would like to see a list.
Because Judy and I, as you heard, one of the big pieces of our experience was having issues clarified. What really were the basic issues, as much as the kind of people's opinions about what we should do is the questions they had and the issues they were kind of struggling with.
Walt?
It's kind of, I think this is really important, and anecdotally, without saying any names, I had a current council person and a former council person that had council and commission completely screwed up. I mean, they were mixing apples and oranges in our discussion, and by the time we were through, they said, man, I came in here understanding this completely wrong. And so if they can be confused. A lot of other people can. So in these open houses, it's been really important to talk people through, even at times turn into Ruth's things up here and say, what you're asking me if we can do, we cannot do with any of these 4 approved things. And they were, trying to mix commissions and managers and things like that. And so it's been astounding to me at how easy it is to mix not only council and commission, but manager and executive and administrator and why. So
Absolutely.
And I also think on going to the open houses, and the other part of the surveys are having, and this will probably come out when we talk big picture, actually get into the mud of it, of what we're deciding, what the individuals thought. I mean, there are a lot of individuals that had some unique questions and comments, and I think those come out through us when we discuss it. And I think having somebody to go through the surveys and just kind of get the data from it would be important as well, as Marcy suggested.
I just think the whole process, the materials that we created for the open houses and the way that they clarify what these options are and how this process is going to move forward, it kind of gives me, I feel like now I have the credibility that I need to really speak to this issue as a study committee member, where I feel like I'm gaining a lot of confidence about that.
Well,
I really do wish that more than 100 people had come to this. And if I don't know whether Judy can hear, but at the first one, 10 minutes before 7, these 3 ladies walked in. A 96-year-old mom and her 2 daughters, 70-something years old, and they sat down, and Judy and I talked to them for the next half an hour, and they came in with, this was their position. They wanted to do this, and I'm not going to say what that was. It's not important right now. But so they said, what do you think? And so we started talking through all the different components of this. By the end of the talk, they said, can we tear these up and get a fresh one? We didn't say, this is what you ought to do, this is what you ought to think. We talked through these things. And as I said before, the confusion, even about commission and council, boy, I'm just scared of how confusing this is for the voter. We at times get sideways, and we're dealing with this a lot.
Ruth and Marcy?
If I could just make a comment about that, our council is actually more like a commission because they have executive authority.
Yes,
Because
it is a
council
commission.
members in those 2 council forms have no executive authority as a council member. That is all in their elected or appointed manager.
Yes,
That was
the
part of
name
the
is wrong.
confusion.
Right.
Issue.
An administrator is not in state code and can come and
Right.
go. The whole position can be gone.
And
So-
that was really beautifully illustrated in the chart, where you have the 4 acceptable forms of government, and then you've got Grand County here, which doesn't really fit in any.
It does not.
Which is why we're doing
column.
this.
But to expect that the average voter is really clearly going to understand this, I think is unrealistic. But I do think that if we convince the average voter that we have done the best job we possibly could as a group and have, included as much information as we can, I feel like a lot of voters are going to say, hey, we trust you,
And
I could be unrealistic too.
And my thought is, looking at all, when you kind of look at it big picture, it's not I know this might not be a popular thing to say, but it's not as much as an insult, because when they said you need to change your form of government, because a lot of people took it as a stab or an attack. But you kind of look at it, and we're just kind of this weird abnormality, and then it doesn't really, and doesn't fit it, and so it kind of, you could find some other logical reasons why perhaps they did this, but at the end of the day, it'll become more clear as to what we are once we pick one of the forms.
So I just remembered what I was trying to say earlier, if I may.
Yeah, of course.
in the invitational to the, last call kind of thing for the survey, we want to guide them definitely to the county website where the study materials are, because that's the big difference is those who did not come to the open house didn't get any of that engagement. And if they just sit there and fill out a survey, what are we
They can
going to
be
be
like
getting
the
back?
3 women who came in 10 minutes before the end. Or like, frankly, like I was at the start of the process. Yeah. I'm a lot less
So when you
convinced than
send
I used to
when
be.
you send the invitation out to staff, I think that they should be given a survey with the open house materials and say, before you fill out the survey, please read through this. It's very important.
But
we said we
said
weren't
no,
going
we-
to send it.
yeah,
We're not going to send it.
Okay.
Could we add,
We were following your lead.
could,
No,
Yes, I can, Judy.
when they come to pick it up, whatever they're going to
Oh,
get.
right, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, Judy, go ahead.
I think you're making it way too complicated. My impression of both of the meetings were that they were very positive. It wasn't
Yeah.
so much different than what we were all saying. And what the people were coming in with, if they had enough information, they were coming up with just a couple of differences. So even looking at the surveys as a whole, we're going to only come up with just minor trends. But I think we need to keep it as simple as humanly possible, because I don't think this is going to be, we're going to come together with a really good process, and then we're going to sell what we come up with, because it's a lot simpler than it's made to sound in a meeting on the phone.
Well, thank you. I was getting confused too. I said, thank you. I'm kind of with her. I was like, we're making it too big of a deal.
I agree.
instead of-
That's my input.
Thanks, Judy. All right, any other discussion on item F? We can move to item.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Subcommittees were mentioned, and so we know who attended those open houses. So would the next step be for me to get those surveys to those individual, like, Mr. Chair, you attended both, can I get them to you? And
Do we want to do a subcommittee? Is that what we'd like to do on it?
We should at least
No.
wait till after the next meeting.
Right. I think
So Friday.
Bob's suggestion about the
Finish.
study committee members that were at those open houses, if 2 or 3 of those people can get together
I'd be happy to.
and look at the surveys, talk about what transpired, and just write up a narrative.
But we're still going to get more surveys from
Sure.
the 4th, so. And
That'll
talk
be
to people.
That'll be another group.
we could wait till after that.
Let's do that.
That's what
I'll
I'm
just
thinking.
So
hold
table
on.
it for the
we
time.
should
Wait till
do
after they're
everything.
all together.
Yep, and then we'll reassess it next
So after
meeting.
July 5th. So we'll look at it at the July meeting.
Moving now on to item G, suggestions for content of postcard mailers and approving budget for same.
I don't think it's a good idea anymore.
Yeah, I agree.
Frankly, I don't see any purpose to a postcard at this point. It's been such a good job to get people advised of these meetings. I don't know what we would say on a postcard, except, hey, you missed the meeting.
Possibly use some money you're setting aside for those to do some more advertising.
I think it's a better idea.
Concur.
Moving now to item H, do we want to table this item?
Yes.
Or see if Mr. Day appears, and if he does, we'll just bring it up next time. Walt?
Have we heard from Jeremy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is he okay?
He wanted to be here, but there's an emergency where his work is.
Okay.
They had a
So
pipe-
should we
That's
just,
what I'd heard, but
so we just move it to the next meeting?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Do you
then we
wanna
could,
stay
we could
with
open
the
it if he
items?
comes up.
Sorry. We're going to, item H, approving use of Facebook and/or other social media. Committee member Day is handling this item. We'd like to push it to the next meeting that we have. Hopefully, Mr. Day will be able to join us then. Moving then to item I, suggestions for additional public service announcements. Ms. Till?
Well, I can certainly, has anybody heard the PSA on KZMU? I haven't either. But I don't listen very frequently. Do y'all know that KCYN has no live person in it anymore?
No, I did not know that.
I didn't either. They did
And that the
in
woman who
November.
runs KCYN is in Price? Does it all remotely? So she did record an ad for the open houses that's supposedly on KCYN. I don't know how effective that is either, but I will definitely put together a PSA on KCMU because that's free. I think the newspapers are doing a good job giving us really good, media coverage. I just wanted to know if anybody had any other ideas, between now and July. We can plug the July 4th kind of booth and.
So,
Cricket?
I was wondering, because I saw this, I was flipping through the channels, and I wondered about getting something on the roller.
Channel 6.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't have TV, so I wouldn't.
Well, I don't ever go to that channel, but I just, it was there, it was, and it said, for some
Who does
reason.
that?
The visitors.
No, it's, yeah. Oh, that's probably true, huh? Well, I don't know, maybe not, because I used to watch it all the time when it had a lot of local stuff.
Yeah, when it was
But now
local.
it's all commercials.
That's
And
right.
Detroit
Yeah.
is-
And Ken Davey was amazing.
That's right.
So never mind, forget about that. That was an idea that left already. I say we give you some of that money we were used for mailing.
Well, we don't
and do
really
ads.
need. I mean,
Not much.
we don't really need money. I'm trying to kind of spread it out around the various
What about a
places.
deal in the advertiser?
Oh, well, so in the advertiser, I ran
You ran
an
an ad.
8-page ad and classifieds.
I saw that.
But we can
I
do that. So I'll put together a next little round of this is where we're at.
Okay.
This is your
Great.
opportunity. Yeah, I'll do that.
Any other suggestions on item I? If not, we'll move on to item J, suggestions for next newspaper editorial regarding the public engagement process. I, in my own personal knowledge, came up with this. Put something in the paper that says, missed an open house, last chance to get the survey content so that we can mail and email it out to you. Get them in by July 5th, 2019, and then let people know if they weren't able to come out that we'd be thrilled to have them here. And then we also should guide them to the county website in that same
And
newspaper editorial.
to the July 4th celebration.
Yes.
And on to the July 4th celebration. So it just dawned on me. So I'll write that up and get that to the
Well,
newspapers.
so we have some money. So how about we spend a little bit on some kind of decoration?
Good idea.
Put it in a
like
box.
Red, white, and blue,
Yes,
whatever.
bunting.
Bunting.
Yep.
And maybe have
Balloons.
some candy, a little bit of candy to give
Little
out to the
handouts.
kids. Handouts.
Okay.
Make it festive. It's the 4th of
Good
July.
idea.
Oh, you're talking the table.
Swag.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
No, we're
Sorry.
talking about-
I was the newspaper article for a
No,
second.
I'm sorry.
Lollipops
What
You're
did
fine.
you
kids
have?
or
I'm
something.
sorry. I didn't work.
Well,
I just got a note from the president of the League of Women Voters over here that they have such stuff that
We could borrow.
would work. Gary, you right?
perfect.
We won't have to buy
For,
it.
this is all for the July 4th.
Yeah.
4th
But
of July.
we, have
Perfect.
something for the kids to take away and information for the adults and surveys and.
As somebody who's done a lot of rodeo parades, you can get those little
Tootsie Rolls?
Tootsie Rolls for real cheap at
Packards?
Packards.
Great.
Those great big bags. Yeah. So,
Question about,
Yep.
there's probably a charge for a booth, and we don't even know if there's availability of a booth. So who's going to decorate this booth if we do get it? And are you guys willing to pay, and you don't even know how much it is?
how-
Shall we put something on the agenda for Friday? And
We
maybe
should-
I can
Yep.
get some things in.
Put this item on the agenda for Friday.
Carrie and I can get the table done.
Okay.
We'll design the
Decorate it.
table. I think
Yeah.
Cricket, you reached out. Do you know who to reach out to
I'm
see if the
looking
table's
right now,
available?
but yes, yes.
Okay. So if we put you two on that item, we can address it on our next meeting.
What time do we want to launch?
I don't know what time.
I'll find out all that information. We'll know
Okay.
it Friday.
Next
We'll
week.
know at the next meeting. I'll have all the information.
Okay.
And you guys are okay with the newspaper article as I kind of just read through it? Okay.
I wouldn't mind taking one last look at it just because.
Sure, I'll type
use
it up.
for employees. Yeah.
Sure. Anything else on item J? If not, we'll move to citizens to be heard. Is there anyone out there that would like to be heard? No.
Oh,
Okay.
come on and talk to us.
Moving then to present.
You might need a mic.
Do you want to come up and, you said that, you come up to the mic because no one else can, sorry. We're being recorded, YouTube, and Miss Carmichael can't hear us otherwise. Could you please state your name?
So my name is Shannon Butler. I'm with Moab Sun News. But as a citizen, I would probably think that a lot of people would see it on the Moab Classifieds on Facebook because a lot of people pay attention.
I'll do that.
One. So that might be a good idea.
Great idea.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So
I'll add that
you'll
to
do
my-
what?
I'll add Moab Classifieds to my additional public service announcements / advertising list.
And then Facebook is for next time.
Moab Classifieds is a
We were meeting.
site on Facebook. So
Yeah,
it's
she was
not-
meeting
Oh.
item H. So item H, we tabled it for next time,
Oh, okay.
talking about that. But you're saying that under the public service announcement, you'll put it on the Moab Classified section to allow people to hear from it and read from it, etc. Perfect.
And I believe there's a Moab Classified and Classifieds plural. I think there might be two,
When there's a
Talk
one
about
that
it.
post all you want, Moab Classifieds, there's several, so.
Yep.
several.
Right.
But if I see you share it, I could share it too on other sites, so, yeah.
Okay, moving now.
Run that by you, Ruth, before I do it.
Gotcha. Any other citizens to be heard? If not, we'll move to presentations. Seeing none, we'll move to general business. Seeing no general business action items, we'll move to consent agenda action items. There's none there. Moving to discussion items, there's none there. And moving to discussion and possible action on study strategy, item K, report on additional fee information for engagement of outside counsel, continued from April 12, 2019, and approving proposed contract award for drafting the optional plan ordinance, postponed from May 17th, 2019. Mr. Day? Mr. Greenberg. It's for both of them.
You've probably seen the email chain concerning Steve Russell. Again, he's willing to do the work for $150 an hour, not to exceed $3,000.
It is in your packet.
Yeah, it was in your packet. And if you look at the response the one real response we got, and you kind of refigure it, that instead of 425 or 340 or 215 an hour, not to exceed 3,000 is about kind of the same amount at that lower billing rate. So I think that's a very reasonable proposal. The county attorney, who jumped in when I was not available, also thought that was reasonable, 20 hours, and if it got more complicated, we could always renegotiate. Steve has been very fair with the county. I'd like to see us keep the work in town. I don't know if this committee's ready to move ahead without Jeremy being here, but
I think that whoever we hire is gonna have to start over and read the code and everything, so we're gonna
Okay.
be paying for extra for that.
no,
So-
that's included. I mean, it's
I
what
mean,
you're,
still,
what
he's
you're
gonna have to
hiring.
catch up to
Mhm.
date, and I'm not comfortable with Steve, I'm just gonna put that out there.
Can you say why?
I just have read many of his articles.
That was his letters to the editor?
Yeah, and they're very out there, so I'm just not.
I agree with you, but that's not his
Well,
legal stuff.
I would, I understand what Cricket is saying in this, but we're asking him to write a piece of law. We're not asking him for a philosophical position on something, I don't think. And we're going to give him the guidance of what we want to see in that law. There, he's just putting it in legal language, and that's got to be reviewed by our county attorney.
And by us.
And who? And
Right.
us. And so if there's anything amiss, we would collectively deal with that. I do, like as Bob said, keeping the business in the county if there was a qualified person to do that here. I think that's a real advantage. He'd probably get some advice from a former council person that, isn't he married to Joette? Yeah. So anyway.
Judy, do you want to weigh in?
Judy?
If she doesn't come on, she did say she was going to be having to leave the call early.
Okay.
So I don't know at what point.
Huh.
Okay.
Well, I think it might be a good idea to wait a week to make
Yeah.
a decision
That's fine.
when presumably Judy and Jeremy can be here. I don't think we ought to be in a rush here. We don't need any legal review this week.
Not for a while.
True.
And
I do think we need to start moving and making some decisions on these things. There's been a couple times when we've mentioned that we've got legal review on something, and the person we're using for legal review isn't the person. We've kind of been on the fence of we don't want to use the county attorney's office to do all the work.
well, they,
But
won't,
then
they
we
can't
can't.
do it. They can't.
Exactly. We don't want to and we can't. But then we still keep seeking legal review, and when people bring that up, that it's gone through legal review, who's it going through?
Gavin, at this point.
So,
And Christina.
and Christina, which is the other question of, if we're going to get outside counsel, we need to start making progress. That's my concern, especially if we're going to get somebody on to have it done by November. We're going to find that maybe people might lose interest in working. Just being an attorney myself, I know that if other bigger projects come along, I might get busy and say no. So that's kind of my 2 cents.
I do have
Ruth?
one thing. There was a leftover assignment from last time, and maybe this will give a little more time to get that assignment done, or maybe it is done. And that was Jeremy was going to check with Par Brown and ask of the same thing that has been asked of Snell and Wilmer, the opposing party in the lawsuit.
He has talked to him, I think.
Yeah, there was a letter saying no thanks.
I didn't
believe.
get it, so I can't put it in the back.
From Par Brown or from the?
Oh, that was somebody else.
That was.
That was, yeah, no, that
I
was.
think we have Judy back. Sorry. Judy.
We hear you breathing.
Judy, can you hear us?
Sounds like a cell phone.
Marcy?
Do you think that Gavin Anderson would be able to recommend someone that might be able to do this for us?
Ask him.
I'll ask him.
Well, I think we have two reasonable proposals. One has a formal conflict of interest, which we would have to waive.
What is that, Bob?
The Snell and Wilmer proposal is by a firm that was retained by the Grand County Republican Party to sue the county. Yeah, and so that is a formal conflict of interest, and they cannot work for us unless we waive that, and the county, I believe, and the county waives it as well. So that's a piece of business that is sitting there. I'm not entirely uncomfortable with waiving myself. I've dealt with them before, and they say they can act fairly. I'm sure they can. And I think the same issues apply with them as do with Steve. You know, we're not buying their former political beliefs or their letters to the editor. What we're buying is some technical
Legal
services.
expertise.
Yeah, and I also think Steve's proposal is fine too. I think we've got two decent proposals. This brings me back to the issue that Christina raised, which was she suggested that we only be able to act with 5 affirmative votes. And we're in a situation here where there are only 5 of us, occasionally a 6th, sitting here. But we could pass this with 4 votes. I really think we're at a table till next week. I don't think that's going to hurt anything. So I'm going to make that motion to table for a
I'll
week.
second.
Second.
Who's second?
Speak to it.
Well,
Everybody did.
We all seconded it.
Oh.
Pick one. That's Judy. Was that your horse?
Judy, can you hear us? No, she can't.
It's funny.
Do we need to vote on that, or is it?
Yeah, you gotta.
Yeah. All in favor, please raise your hand.
Assuming there's no more discussion.
Okay, we have 4 in favor. Chair votes against, and we don't know what Judy votes.
Chair votes against tabling it.
Chair votes against tabling it, yeah.
Oh, thank you. I missed that.
Why did
Do what?
Do we have anything further on item K? Seeing none, we're going to put the item back on for next time. Item L, consideration for contracting for expert consultation on election districts.
And I apologize. On your dais is the front and back page. The packet was missing the front page of the experience of the gentleman that I'm sure Mr. Greenberg will tell you all about.
What I discovered as I poked into this a little bit is that people who are experts in redistricting mostly are experts because they've either worked in voting rights issues or they've worked to gerrymander districts for one of the political parties. But again, this is a technical issue. Whoever we retain will do what we asked. And I've spoken to Mr. Cooper several times. His fee is reasonable. He thinks this is a half-day job, a 4-hour job. And he said he can come down in September and actually run scenarios live for us with his software to, if we say, well, what if you did this or what if you did that, he could actually show that to us. I think we need to have that information before we really decide whether or not we're going to recommend a system with districts or not. And after a good roundtable discussion with the county clerk and the county attorney and Ruth and myself, it appears that it is part of our job as part of the transition plan to actually specify the districts, at least in the first instance. That'll change because we've got a
2020 census.
A census coming up, but for the first couple of years, what we recommend is what the voters will have to vote on as far as the districts, if indeed we go with districts. So I would like to make a motion as per that cover sheet. Oh, by the way, Cooper did work for one committee just exactly like ours, and that is the Wilmington, Delaware job that he did. I'm sorry, the Wenatchee.
Washington.
Yeah, Washington. He said that was in fact a study committee, just like ours. So I would make the motion that we contract with Mr. Cooper in an amount not to exceed $1,000 for initial draft plans for both 3 and 5 voting districts, and that we direct him to try and promote diversity on the governing body, ensure there were an equal number. It shouldn't be registered voters, it should be residents. I'm looking at the law, not voters. And to keep together communities of interest insofar as it's possible. But he'll have to depend on us to help him look at what those are, although he can also look at the voting rolls. That's the motion.
I'll second it.
Hang on, can you repeat your motion so it's clear?
That we contract with William Cooper in an amount not to exceed $1,000 for initial draft plans for 3 and 5 voting districts, and direct him to use those plans to promote diversity, to ensure there are equal number of residents, and to keep together communities of interest.
And I'll second it for sake of discussion.
So we have a motion to contract with Mr. Cooper in the amount not to exceed $1,000 to lay out initial plans for 3 and 5 districts and directed to promote diversity, residents, and keeping communities of interest together. And it has been seconded by Ms. Till. Ms. Till?
And why are we not considering 7 districts.
I don't know, I asked that myself after I wrote this, but it seemed to me that the preponderance of interest, at least Judy and I got, were a 5-person governing body, which couldn't have more than 5
Oh,
districts.
I see. Never mind.
That's
If
all.
we did elect to recommend 7
It'd be,
members,
presumably, it'd be like,
presumably we might have X districts and X at large. I
yeah,
got
that
it.
was my thinking. I don't think anyone that I've spoken to is supportive of a 7-person body with 7 people elected by district, so I just didn't include it. We certainly could.
I am very interested in having someone who has experience with districting to come in and look at our community, because I think it is an unusual community as far as districting goes. I think it's very challenging. I don't feel like I have the expertise to arbitrarily create districts based on population. If you look at our districts now, it looks like somebody just had a free-for-all, or I don't know what they were doing. So I'm very curious to see what someone who has experience in this, what their take on it is.
Walt?
Yeah, the reason they're screwy now is they were just overlaid on the school districts back in '92 when we did that change of government. But having been at both the 2 open houses, one of the most common area of concern by people that talk to me is a number of them liked at least some districts, but they were very skeptical about how those districts would be laid out. They didn't want any politics played with them, one side or the other. They wanted an assurance that it would be done as basically the Constitution says, on population, not whether you're this party or that party or how you voted or anything else. And I assured him that, at least from my perspective, I was going to absolutely insist that that be done in an objective way by somebody that knew what they were doing, with a computer or whatever makes sense to do that. And whoever is, and the way we talked about it is, if this notebook is Grand County, and there's 10,000 people in Grand County, and you have 5 districts, that's 2,000 people in a district, not voters, 2,000 people in a district. And with the census data, you can lay that out.
Hey, Walt, 1 second.
What?
Judy, can you hear us?
Can you hear?
We lost Judy for a second. Okay.
I lost you guys. I lost you at about 107 on my cell phone. I left you a message on the other line.
Okay.
Okay, Judy,
I can only hear Walt, Stephen, and Ruth on the microphone.
Well, I'm here.
okay, so Judy, we're discussing considering, for contracting expert consultation on election districts. We have a motion that has been seconded to allow Mr. Cooper to the amount of up to $1,000 to draw out 3 and 5 districts to promote diversity, residents, and keeping communities together. Ms. Till seconded, and now Walt's kind of is talking about why he would be in favor or against it right now. So that's you being up to date, if I've stated it fairly.
Yeah, I didn't know until right now about this contact. All I can tell you is I will fight that to the end, that we have got, if there are districts, which I kind of assume they're going to be based on the feedback I'm getting from people, at least some, that they be laid out in a way that is absolutely objective and defensible. And if this person has got the credentials to do that, and we can tell him, we're not here as Democrats or Republicans or anybody else wanting you to play games. We want something that you can explain to the population in this county that this was done fair and square, with no unreasonable or inappropriate factors considered.
Cricket and then Marcy.
So I'm against districting because we are a small county with a small number of people. The most comparable county like us is St. George, and they don't have districts. And I think if I want fair representation, and the only way I get fair representation is if I get a vote for every council member. So that's my bottom line.
Marcy, then Walt.
So I think that, I think as this committee moves forward, considering districting versus at-large or some combination of both, I think in order to make an educated decision, I would like to have the information that Cooper can provide us. I'm not saying I'm in favor of districts, but in order to really make an educated decision, I need more information.
Walt, then Bob.
I think what Marcy just said is exactly where I am, and we're not, the discussion right now is not whether we're going to have them or not, but if we do, the people that we're talking to over the next however many months we're discussing this need to know there is a way, we know there is a way to do districts in a fair and open manner. Whether we decide or recommend eventually that they're going to vote on all districts or all at-large or some combination isn't today's, I don't think today's decision. And so I am thrilled that there is somebody like this that we can have that information on the table, and it's not just theoretical, it's actual. And if we're going to have that guy come down and do a presentation, I would love to have that presentation completely advertised to the public that was a common question at the open houses, and here's where you can come and understand exactly how they would be laid out so that they would be fair, whether it's 3, 5, or 19, whatever.
Bob?
Yeah, I think we need to at least see what districts would look like before we decide on them. I'm certainly less sure than I used to be about whether or not they're a good idea. But I do want to say that the arithmetic around representation is kind of squirrely. I mean, right now the city elects all at large. And we've got kind of a homogeneous city council.
Aren't you happy?
No, I'm not. I don't think it's a good idea. I think diversity is better, because I remember squalling like a mashed cat for years that progressives were not represented in county government, and now I hear my conservative friends singing the same song that conservatives aren't represented. So I think diversity is key. I'd like to hear this guy present to us and see if he can put together 3 and 5 numerically fair districts that help us maintain some diversity.
My one thought that I'm having, I'd like, speaking of diversity, I think it's important to have, if we could get Judy to weigh on this, if we could get Jeremy to weigh on this. My thoughts are it's difficult for us to spend $1,000 in my mind without knowing if this is the direction we're going into, and having 3, 5, 7 districts, not knowing the amount of districts that we're going to have. I think it's spending money on something that we don't necessarily know what it's going to be, what it's going to entail. So purchasing this or getting this information, I think it is important. I just don't know if it's one of those chicken and the egg ideas. That's kind of my thoughts right now.
Well, I'm with Marcy on this. In order to make a decision about whether or not we're going to consider districts seriously, we need to see what they might look like, I think. I can't. In the abstract, I don't want to make decisions in the abstract. Are districts good or are at-large good? I'm not Plato. I can't deal that way. I need to see some concrete stuff.
Well,
Walt and Marcy.
I just, if he comes down here and does a presentation and does 3 districts, to me it's illustrative. It isn't the final deal at all. It's to show us what it would look like. If it's a half a day work, and we change our mind and it's going to be 5 districts or no districts or whatever it is, we're at $1,000, and I guarantee you there's going to be some public that wants to come see what that process would look like, not from me talking to them or you talking to them, but actually seeing that it can be done in an objective fashion. There's so much skepticism around this country now as to how parties have played games with elections, that I really feel strongly we need to show them we aren't going to do that, and that there is a way to do this in a fair and open manner.
Marcy?
Ditto. I just think that we have an unusual lay of the land. We have unusual population density areas. I think that districting in Grand County is a unique challenge, and I, for one, would love to give that to somebody that knows what they're doing, or at least professes to know what they're doing.
And my other thought is this. If the individual comes back and has the districts laid out, and we show the public that, there might be individuals that come out and say, hey, I don't like how he's drawn the districts. As opposed to if we say, we want 3 districts, we want 5 districts, we want 19 districts, and then they draw it, I think that's different. I think it's accepting whatever is coming, because if we have the result of the maps beforehand, you might have people coming out and saying, well, I don't like that because that puts Castle Valley with this part of Moab. That's where it could become more political than what we intend if we're saying, hey, we want to see what the districts are going to shake out to be before we decide how many districts we're having. That's kind of my concern, Walt.
All right, then, I mean, what you're saying makes some sense as well, but I'd still like to pay this guy some money to come down here and do a presentation to this group, an open presentation about if you decide to do districts, this is how I would do it, and how this is what the software looks like in a PowerPoint and that kind of thing, so that we can see. That just gives us better information.
I mean,
Marcy?
in my opinion, districts, one of the pros for districting are that you have a representative, a direct representative of your area of residence. We have districting now, and I don't think that it's terribly effective. I don't feel like we have that kind of regional representation. So I'm definitely not sold on districts, but I think that there could be a need for districts. I think Spanish Valley residents have very different concerns than Moab City proper residents, than Castle Valley residents, than Thompson residents. And so I'm curious to know how we could make that work to our residents' advantage.
And that's where the concern for me comes down. What happens if Mr. Cooper puts Spanish Valley with the city and Castle Valley with somewhere else? Because when we're directing him to keep communities together, that's the part, another part that I have concern with, because we just want, in my mind, numbers. We shouldn't go into weighing into keeping communities together, diversity, interest, because
that may essentially change the perception about districting for everybody. I mean,
So
I don't know.
Cricket.
I don't understand why we got to keep communities together. We're all Grand County residents.
Yeah.
So I don't understand why Castle Valley thinks they need representation different than me living on Center Street in Moab, because Castle Valley is a bedroom community to Moab. There's no business out there except for B&Bs. So why do they think they need their own representation? I think we are all Grand County residents, and we should all care about who gets elected, and we all should have a voice. And I understand what you're saying about that we're not being thorough. Okay, maybe that's the word, thorough. But how do you possibly figure out how many people live in a certain area if you're not using the registered voters?
Yeah, you're
How
using
do you-
census data, you have
The
to,
census
But,
data.
and how old's that?
10 years.
Yeah, and so that's not even going to be even close to what's here now. So to me, that's like, huh? Because you're going to be doing it on, how much has Moab grown in 10 years?
Not all that much.
Well,
Marcy.
Does the clerk have more accurate information about residents?
In your packet.
Well, that's registered voters. I think
What about people that are paying
that's,
property taxes,
yeah, you see.
don't necessarily live here?
that's right. But I think what you do is you look at the voter rolls, you look at the utility bills, I don't know, we could ask him exactly how his modeling works. And I'd be happy to strike the language in my motion that refers to community interests and just ask him for, districts drawn straight on the numbers. And if my second agrees, we'll do that.
Sure.
So-
Was that amendment or not?
Yes.
So will you state your amendment clearly?
Well,
To essentially strike any language after 3 and 5 districts, period?
right, exactly.
Okay, so the amendment is to strike the language to direct Mr. Cooper to promote diversity, residents, and keeping communities of interest together. So
Yeah,
that
strike
language
all
would be
that.
stricken.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying.
A second on the amendment?
Yes.
Okay.
I think it's money well spent.
Walt?
Just, I've gone back and forth on this district and at large and that kind of thing, and that's why the open houses have been really interesting to me, because I've posed the question at both of them to people that were advocating for one or the other. And one of the questions is, it would seem like in Salt Lake County, where you have a huge population, that there really are area differences in the county that you can articulate. It seems like in a smaller county like this, there would be fewer, which is kind of what Cricket is saying too.
You're making my
several-
argument for me.
No, several people said, that's not true. They said, if you had all the people at large, and they're mostly like you guys, and they're talking about the study committee, there's 4 out of 7 of us that live within 2 football fields of each other in this
That's
town.
right.
And
That's not good.
and that's not representative.
But then again,
And if I could just finish, I'm sorry, Cricket. What they said is, just take, for example, zoning. We just went through a damn fiasco zoning, and they said, I'm still furious, and there was nobody that was making the voting on that zoning that lived out here where we really got impacted. And I went, whoa. So there are some issues. And so there's a lot of people, it may not be Cricket in this one or some others on this thing, but there's a lot of people out there that would like to be assured, I'm not advocating one way or another right now, that would like to be assured that they've got somebody that understands their issues because they affect them too. But they said, we don't want games played with laying something out. So that's why I think this is kind of important. Whether we ever end up doing the districts or not, we'd at least have a hell of a lot better information to deal with it.
Cricket, then Bob?
okay, so here's my 2 cents to that. Our biggest problem with elections is we don't have anybody to run in the districts. And a
do
lot
what?
to run in the districts. How many times has somebody gone unopposed because nobody else can run? You have people like, say, on this committee who care about the community, who put forth the effort. And I'm not saying I want to run because I don't want to run. But you have people in areas that have, retired, community service, civic minded. You're going to say only one of you in that whole group. And then we're going to try to find somebody in this district or whatever that can run. And then you don't have anybody to run. And then how many times have people went I think we don't have a big enough pool in this community to have people who are willing to put forth the time and effort, and then we end up with people who just get stuck back in. So I don't think we're a big enough community to need districting. And so there's my shut up now.
I've got Bob, then Walt, and Marcy.
The question before us today, though, is not
Right.
whether districting is a good idea or not. The question is, in order for us to do a fair, transparent, and open-minded job, do we need to look at the possibility of districts before we make a decision on that matter? And I think we do. I think if we take something off the table kind of with a pocket veto, it'd be a mistake. It'd be telling anyone who's out there who thinks districts are a good idea that we're not even going to consider them.
Bob, or Walt?
Well, along that line, what Cricket said is true, I think, on not getting representatives, but we also have some really squirrely districts right now that are not equally balanced. There's 5 of them that were overlaid on a school district thing. I would almost like for this guy to be able to take the 5 existing districts and use census data and show us what the population is actually in those districts and what it would be if we just had 3. Maybe we already have that. Marcy's pointing at Ruth, but
Kind of gave us that information.
but anyway, if you had 3 districts, I'm not advocating that now. If you had 3 districts and they were evenly drawn and there were, just for the sake of discussion, 3 districts with 10,000 people, you'd have 30-something hundred people in each district. You have a lot better chance of finding candidates, I would think.
Marcy?
Well, one of the pieces of information that we're gathering at the open houses are kind of the pros and cons of districting versus at-large, and people do have opinions, and I think that we can collate that information to present to this group, and I agree with Bob that we're not determining whether or not we are advocating for or against districting or at-large, but that this is really information gathering.
And my thought is I think it adds another element to it. It adds another element to. No, we don't have Judy. We don't have Judy, and we don't have Mr. Day. For me, it adds another element that if somebody was on the fence, if the proposed idea draws a district that individual doesn't want, they might say, I don't like that because I'm not with other people of like interest. And I think if I would make a decision on districts or not, I don't want my sample of what a district looks like beforehand to influence someone. That's a concern that I have, is that if somebody says, I don't want to vote with them because I think they'll vote for the pink party, and that for that reason I want 5 districts because I prefer that district map. That's one of the concerns that I have. Or they would switch from being in favor of having districts to being at large. I think it's adding another element to a decision that we haven't made. If we had the results after the fact, I would be more comfortable if we had the results from Mr. Cooper given to us after the fact, to avoid the perception of somebody walking in and saying, hey, the only reason why Stephen voted in favor of that because he was in the district that outnumbered Castle Valley. Because if the residents of Castle Valley get outnumbered, maybe they won't like the district. That's kind of what I'm feeling, that it complicates the situation.
So you're willing to vote for a pig and a poke in terms of districts? Okay. Fair enough.
My other thought would be I would entertain the motion to table it so that we could get input from 2 out of the 7 of us that aren't here.
We do have amended motion on the table right now.
I understand.
Okay.
I can't make motions.
What I'm saying is we have to dispose of
Sure.
that motion first, of course.
So, do we have additional discussion about the motion that's on the table at this time, or the motion that's before us at this time? Contract with Mr. Cooper for an amount not to exceed $1,000 for the initial drawing of 3 and 5 districts. Do we have any other discussion on that? Bob?
I'll move to table
Well, so let's dispose of this motion.
the amendment is what you're suggesting we have to dispose of.
Well, maybe you know better than I do. We have an amended motion on the table.
Right,
so what
and a
do we do
motion
with
to
that?
table supersedes that.
Oh, you're amending again
No,
to postpone.
it's a separate motion.
Substitute motion.
No, to table has a special status.
I'm just saying, we have a motion on the floor. We have
But
to dispose
a
of
motion
that.
to table, no, takes precedence over it, is what I'm saying.
Or you
Okay.
can withdraw your motion.
I think that
No, once it's been stated by the chair, you can't.
Okay.
It belongs to the committee. You can only withdraw before the chair has stated it. Tony Roberts.
We've got a motion to table the amended motion. Do we have a second on
And by table, we mean postpone to another meeting.
Postpone to our next meeting, I'm sorry.
to postpone to the next meeting? Do we have a second on that motion to table?
Sure.
Second. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, we'll move to the vote on the motion to table, the amended motion. So all those in favor, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. Those opposed? 1.
You don't want to table it.
Yeah, she wants to
Miss Green
She-
voted negative. So we've tabled this to bring it up next time,
So that was 4-1
4-1, with 2 absent.
Ms. Green.
Actually, let me vote because the planning commission the other night didn't even let me vote.
Always got to vote. Okay.
Didn't even let me.
How'd they stop you?
They didn't let me.
Any other discussion on matter L? Seeing none at this time, we'll move to public hearing possible action items. There are none. Moving now to item M, ideas for monthly progress report for presenting at the June 18th, 2019 County Council meeting. I think through the discussions that we've had, I think it would be important to highlight the open houses that we've had, the success that we've had there, the upcoming July 4th, and then give them an update. I don't know what other update that we could give them because everything else is just kind of pending until we get the open houses completed. Yes, Cricket.
Okay, well, so like, after studying the rules, I don't think we need to give them any updates because they're not supposed to be involved, in my opinion.
We don't need to give,
Well,
we don't need to give the county council an update?
They're not supposed to be involved.
I don't think an update is I don't think it's required, but our position in the beginning was it was another way to inform them of the ongoings here. It's not that I'm going there, whoever's going there for their approval. It's just merely more information, I guess, another medium.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it's involving them in the discussion or anything. It's just appraising them of where we are and an update. We're doing that in the paper too. You're doing that. And
Well, that's what I mean. They
Whatever.
can read the paper.
yeah,
Ruth?
Oh, just the council made the request originally, and you all did agree to do this once a month. So I don't know if you want to change it. That's not on the agenda.
I
to
just
change
had
it,
a
but
comment, so
Well, no, I mean, I think
you
it's,
want to vote on it?
It's not on the, you can't vote on it.
no,
Okay.
we could bring it up next time, but that's kind of the update that I would give them, would be that we're just doing the open houses and that July 4th, we're going to have a table, which is going to be exciting. Bring everybody out. Any other discussions on item M? If not, we'll move to item N, review of timeline and scheduling of additional regular meetings. Ruth?
Oh, thank you. So in your packet is a revised timeline. It actually changed between the first open house and the second open house after I got input from Mr. Greenberg and also
Cricket, you're next.
had our county attorney take a look. So it is, it is just a tentative thing. It originally came from Marcy's idea. And so, yeah, so I guess I wanted to make sure you all had a chance to be on the same page. Of course, it was sent to you all by email, but I didn't hear any back from anyone other than Mr. Greenberg. So it was an opportunity to look at it, but also to think about your continued meetings, because that's what this timeline says, is that you're going to continue to meet past the scheduled August dates.
Cricket, then Marcy?
what's funny is I kept trying to click on these because I thought they were an attachment.
Oh.
And I thought it was my phone. And then when I pulled it over my computer, I'm like, oh, duh. I felt, but you're trying to see on your phone, it's these little blue, and I kept clicking on it.
Marcy?
That's a great deal.
I'd like to suggest that we collect the data and from the surveys and have that summarized by the end of July.
And I think that would make sense with what we had suggested previously with,
I don't know.
that would
So,
make sense, I said.
And then I think we take the month of August to really start hashing out what, where are we heading with our recommendation? I think that's going to require some discussion.
So I'm hearing you say collate data, move that to July.
31st.
Or July 31st or August 1st. I'm just saying, this looks like we have the month of August to
Yeah,
continue
but-
gather, and I don't know.
Well,
That's too
I'll
long.
change that to July, because it does say the month of July to collate the data.
Yeah.
And then the month of August to determine the recommendation on the one single form.
Well, or August and September, that's fine. I mean, I think it's gonna take us some time.
And I had the idea that I think that when we start getting into the meat of these questions, our meetings have increased in the amount of time that we're going to spend in general because of some of the subject matter that we're going to talk about. And I don't know if we can stay on track if we're doing, for some of these items, doing a meeting every other Friday or occasionally on, one Friday a week. I don't know if we get through the meat of it. So the options could be to extend kind of the duration and understand that we might be here talking about forms of government because it took us quite a bit of time to just talk about thinking about getting somebody proposed to do districting. So I don't know if, and this is maybe something that Ruth was going to lead into, but looking at the days that we're going to schedule ourselves for.
Right, and I have this as a future consideration because I didn't expect you all to come here with your calendars and all, but I
Sure.
thought we need to be kind of thinking about that because you guys get busy and we need to get something booked and get that out to the public.
Bob, then Cricket.
I'm just wondering if we should do the same thing we did to schedule the meetings now, which is all give Ruth our calendars and see what she can come up with for a reasonable schedule.
I'm
Cricket?
every Friday, but August, the first one in August, because that's our anniversary. I'm going to be gone.
Every Friday gone.
August, our 41st.
Well, we can do this by email.
Sure. I just meant that it might be something we consider maybe doing more than just Fridays. Because if we're going to try to meet the deadline of November, and if we get caught up on one issue and we're going to be arguing or debating about it for an hour per topic, I think we're going to have to probably put more time into it.
If I can do it at noon every day, whichever day, I can make it work. I
Marcy?
have tours in the morning and at night.
So, I want to make sure I understand this correctly.
And I think these are just benchmarks. They're not set in stone. They're just ideas, putting it on paper. All right, we have to decide form of government. We have to decide the optional plan. We have to decide part-time, full-time.
Right, so, but when we approve all components, I'm on page 2, October 2019, approve all components for a draft optional plan to submit to outside legal counsel. So they're going to get that and have it for 6 weeks or 4 weeks or
Sure.
whatever. Okay, then they're going to put together a legal document that specifies what we've outlined.
And then give it back to us.
They're going to give it back to us. I'm assuming there'll be some back and forth during that process.
Send it
then
back
it
to
goes
them.
to our county council
45
for
days.
adoption.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, so then we go to the voters in November. Now, this is
Of
where
next year.
of 2020. So I don't think this has to be fleshed out now, but I do think there is a possibility in our optional plan. This is what I gathered from Gavin, and this is what we need to find out from our county attorney and our county clerk. My understanding was if the voters said yay in November 2020, we could actually hold a special election to fill the slate, however, whatever that looks like, and that is all outlined in the optional plan. So if we go with, let's say we stick with 7, we determine who in 2020 is going to carry over and be part of the transition commission or council, and people that are running know that when they're running, and then we could actually have a special election in November or in June of 2021, and our new form of government could be initiated in January of 2022. Just saying.
It might be able to be sooner, actually.
Bob and Walt.
It's a municipal election, but we could combine them.
It's a general municipal election. It's not a special election.
If we did it in November, but Gavin indicated to me on the phone that he thought if we wanted, once it was approved by the voters, that we could maybe have a special election, but there's different interpretations of the law that we need to get
We need to
clear
find
on.
that out. Okay.
So let me just add the wording here where it says, election of candidates for the newly approved form of government to be determined under the optional plan, but on or before November 2022 might cover that. And that language came from our county attorney. And I believe when our clerk auditor was before you, he said that he and our county attorney were trying to work out some interpretation differences because there's House Bill 224 that became law. There's that. And then there's also election law. So they're having to look at both. So we don't have a final result on that, but I can check and see where they are on that.
Exciting. Any other discussion on item N? Or are we just mulling things over?
No, just, you all want to send me your schedules then
Yes,
as
sir,
before, and then once I have everyone's, I can start putting something together, and it may not be this next meeting, but whenever we can get it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Thank you very much.
This is to
Well-
continue Fridays? Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, we're saying in the future, when we start getting into the nitty-gritty, probably have more time.
Okay, so what you're interested in is if we have conflicts on any given Friday?
Just
what-
dates
did
in
we-
dates
did
in
we-
general would be
Did
helpful.
we
Any
discuss
dates.
anything about extending it from 1 to 2 hours or whatever you asked that question?
Well, I just-
To 2 hours.
I
Yeah,
just
we're
note
already at
that
2 hours.
yeah, once the meeting starts, we just run through it. I'm just saying that it's possible that we could either continue to put the full agenda together and put everything on it and just kind of try to get through as much as we can, or we could set certain items on it. But either way, our meetings are just going to extend out and if the agendas are going to be longer. And I just want people to be aware of that because before I think everybody just put an hour down for lunch. And kind of in my mind, that's how I did it. So I'm just letting people know.
Assuming that you all want me to continue with this process, I do have a full-time job elsewhere outside of this. Fridays do work best for me.
Oh, good. That's what I was going to ask.
I mean, it just,
I was wondering about you, and I was wondering about you. You wouldn't want to do it Tuesdays and Wednesdays. That's court, so.
Yeah,
So that's why I thought which day was the best.
yeah,
So
it's hard.
Friday's the best.
It is.
Okay.
I don't know if we go.
Friday works for me, so that's why I wanted to ask.
If we can't get through the full agenda, that's all I'm saying. Is I don't want this to be, we have a really lively discussion, then we have to kick it down the road for a full week.
Maybe we got to do point of order and move on.
you could have a 5-hour meeting though, I think is what I'm saying. Honestly, you could have a whole afternoon or a whole day on a Friday or, whatever's going to work. And
Yeah.
you don't want to do that if you don't need to, but.
Yeah.
Well, I think some of it, once we start making decisions, I think a lot of the dominoes fall
Yeah.
one after the other. We set up one form of government, I think it kind of flows.
Pushes you into, you have to decide these things.
Yep.
Right.
And
That's
then
right.
there's the transition plan and all that
Yeah.
goes with all
Yep.
that.
Yes.
Yep. Moving now, if there's no other discussion on N, moving to closed session, there's none. Like to adjourn?
Please.
That's the second.
A second. All in favor, unanimous.
That one's always unanimous.
Huh?
That was always unanimous.
They did not let me vote. I'm not kidding. What happened was he voted, Gary said how many for, and he said all those in favor, and everybody